Um, you've got a really interesting story about free speech. I remember the first time you told me, I was quite shocked. And I was shocked as someone who was based in police stations for many years. I've trained police officers, and the story you told me was quite shocking. What was that story?
Yeah, sure. Now I've told this story, and my friend, well, my new friend Charlie Veach has a video, big YouTube channel and stuff, and I he had, I kind of, his and I
Don't be
paths
advertising
crossed.
other people's YouTube channels on my YouTube channel.
Listen, y'all are both great. Y'all are both great. So there's it's a friend. It's there's no rivalry. It's we there's room for all of us. There's room for all of us. And um, what happened was that, so I was with some friends at a pub in Greater Manchester, and this is last November, so it's been whatever that, it's been less than a year, and we were sitting around chatting, and we were talking politics, and we were chatting COVID and masks and just all kinds of stuff, just nonsense and stuff, and we were having a good time. There were 9 of us, if I remember correctly, and we were laughing and carrying on and stuff. And nobody was drunk, nobody was loud. We weren't causing any kind of commotion. And there were few. It wasn't the pub wasn't crowded, and we were having a great time. And the group started breaking up. So this is a Saturday night, early Saturday night, and I left, and a few of us left. There were a couple guys left, and I got a text a little later in the afternoon saying, "Rob, the police just left." And I called my friend right away, and I said, "What do you mean the police just left?" And it turns out that another patron, I don't know who, called the police on us. And so two police officers came on a Saturday night and went up. First they went to, I guess, the bartenders, and then they pointed my friends out, and the cops went over to them, and the cops came over and said, "Were y'all with a group of guys from earlier?" And they said yes. And they said, the cops proceeded to ask them, "What were y'all talking about, and what are your names?" And my friends are like, "What is going on here? Did we do something? Has something happened?" And all this kind of stuff. And my friends were freaking out and everything. And they said, "Well, there's been that somebody had called the police because our language that we had been using was problematic." Okay, problematic language at a pub. And the only things that the cops would tell them was that 2 of the things that had been mentioned were one was 9/11, and the other one was the masks. At that time, masks were you still had to wear masks pretty much all around. And when my friend told me that, I had to start laughing, because I said, y'all know those were 2 of the things I was talking about. But we were just talking. 9/11 was something that, all the American, as an American, I lived through. I mean, I wasn't in New York or anything. I don't mean it like that, but it affected us so badly. And probably a lot of your listeners are too young, but I don't know how it hit over in the UK.
I was actually in the US at 9/11. I was on the Indian reservation north of Chicago. And I watched the first plane hit the tower when I was packing up in the morning my suitcase, and I thought it was a TV program. And it was only when the second plane went in that I decided to turn the TV up to find out what was going on. So I was there. The whole country had a meltdown. It was absolutely terrifying. Yeah, and it's not illegal to have that conversation.
Well, absolutely. And Nick, this would make you really roll your eyes, because I was talking about 9/11 in the context of how, for a brief moment in time, that the United States, we all came together. The United States is a very divided country, politically and otherwise. And I remember it like it was yesterday. And everybody came together. It was a time for mourning and helping out. And there's so many volunteers wanting to help and dig and all that kind of stuff. And just for a brief moment, the country really came together. And so I talked about it in the context of something positive. It was not something negative. When that, and look, and the mask business. Now I admit I am very critical of masks and mask wearing and mask wearers and how the mask has been, in my mind, has been used and abused and that kind of stuff. And so, sure, somebody might have thought, oh, that's kind of interesting, but to call the police,
being, let's call it anti-mask, it's still not illegal.
Absolutely, to have an opinion on it. And then somebody feeling being so fragile and so quote unquote violated and that they felt like we had to be stopped. These guys sitting around in a pub had to be stopped in our wrong think. And the fact that the cops came, that's the shocking part. If you were taking that, listen, the cops get calls, and I get that, there's nothing, anybody can call the police for anything. Absolutely. And I don't know specifically what they said, but why, if you were taking that call, why wouldn't you ask these people, what are they doing that requires police presence? Nothing. I swear it was nothing. And so it was shocking. It was shocking.
It's shocking to me that the police turned up on a Saturday night where we have burglaries, we have violence, we have pub fights, we've got half the young population in the city centre drunk and vulnerable, and they can spare 2 officers to go to a pub to speak to adults about the conversation they were having privately between themselves sat at a table. Absolutely shocking.
Yeah, of course, and we were all in shock. And listen, it was an wake up call for me, because I know as an American I'm protected by our First Amendment, but I didn't know any of the laws here, and I just I guess incorrectly assumed that my speech would be protected in this country. I never had given it a second thought, and I was thinking, well, gosh, do we now have to go into pubs and whisper and have a conversation about something that the next table over might be quote unquote offended by? Is being offended illegal in this country? I didn't know. And so after all of that, I went to the police station. And tried to get a copy of that police report, and I was unsuccessful in doing that. And then I also filed a complaint against the police because I wanted to know what their procedures are, if this is going on all around the country. Because if this is, it's shocking. And even the police, the gentleman at the front desk was shocked when I told him what had happened, because he said, we're not living in the old Soviet Union. And I said, exactly, sir, exactly. So I want to know where this was coming from and why this was happening.
I think the only thing I will add is there's a chance the person who made the report made it sound like you were neo-Nazis and you were planning something, and you were meeting in the pub because you were going to go out and smash windows at a chemist because they sell masks, and you're using 9/11 as inspiration. So whoever made the phone call could have exaggerated absolutely everything to make them turn up. I hope that's true, and I hope it wasn't a case of, oh, we've got adults talking about things we don't want them to talk about, so we're going to take their names. I hope it's the former rather than the latter.
Well, listen, we are living in strange times, if that's worthy of a police. And you're right that they could have said anything, and maybe they misheard. I can't speak for them, but why wouldn't they come up if somebody was said, why wouldn't they go to the bartender and say, say something about us, or even better, just leave and go and just leave. Because I promise we are like the opposite of a violent any kind of group that would be anything of concern to anybody. And this country, this great country, has a pub culture. So as far as I've been in other pubs, and I've heard all kinds of carrying on and language, foul language and drunkenness and boorishness and all kinds of stuff. And there was none of that, absolutely none of that. And it shocked me.
If they'd taken that seriously, it beggars the question, why wasn't you interviewed once you made a complaint and made your details known to the police that you were also there? Why wasn't that followed up if they were that concerned about the people in the pub and that conversation? Someone should have spoken to you after you made yourself known, but they didn't. They'd already closed the case and moved on. It's a very, 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 very strange case.
Yeah, and I've never received a response for my general complaint against the police department, never. And let me say,
well, in which case now you need to go to the step higher. You need to make a complaint to the police ombudsman.
Well, let me just say something, and I've said this before also. I am not anti-police at all. I am as pro-police as you can get, and that's my background. And I've said this before too, that I grew up in a small Texas town, and my daddy always said that the cops are your friends, and if you ever have any problems, you go to them, but you do for them also, because they have a hard, thankless job. And it's not easy. And I'll tell you something. And I'm not that I've always, and that was the part of that broke my heart in a certain sense, because when I was telling my British friends about it, they were saying that there were a lot of negative things that they were saying about the police. And I don't know, maybe I'm naive, but I am as pro-police as you can. That's the last thing I want to do is cause any problem.
But don't forget, I'm extremely pro-police. Like I said, I've spent nearly 10 years based in police stations. I've trained police officers. I used to write patrol plans for them, what to do, where to go, who to speak to. So I'm extremely pro-police. But just because you're pro-police doesn't mean the police don't need constructive criticism about where they're going wrong, because the police took a wrong turn 10 years ago. And the police force we have today isn't the police force we had 10 years ago. And the reason why they've become unprofessional and become woke and become ineffective is because the general public haven't held them accountable, because they work for us, we pay their wages. So the complaint to the police ombudsman is needed, and it's needed en masse, so they know what they're doing is wrong and so they can change. There's no point in criticising the police and never making it formal, because then they will never learn.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And again, my naivete, would, I'm sure played into that. But they did have. There was my first. I was going to the police station, and the gentleman at the front desk was, like I say, he was super. He was so nice and everything. And then I was making a bit of I was becoming a regular over there, trying to get some resolve. And I even went to the police station near where the pub was to try and get some answers, and was unsuccessful. And finally, there was a gentleman, a much bigger physically guy, came out, who was he would try to be intimidating towards me. He's like, "What are you doing here? Why are you bothering us?" And this and that and this and that. And I said to him, I said, "Sir, I said, I'm not the enemy here. I said, I'm just trying to find out some facts here, and that kind of thing." So and again, I wasn't scared, and I wasn't, I didn't, but it was, the last thing I want to do is cause any problems with the police. But like you said, if there are issues, then they should be resolved, and because they do, we should be working together. I am not the enemy, believe me.
Yeah, the police are us, and we're the police, and the police work for us, and we need to hold them more accountable, like we do with all our public services, because they're all going down the wrong path at the moment.